one of the most important things you will have to master in the kitchen is your knife skills. This is where your chef's knife and your paring knife comes in. Most of the jobs I do with my chef's knife, it's easier, but for little tasks, like taking maybe a little brown spot out of your apple or your potato, you can use your paring knife. Let's get started. I've got a collection of vegetables. This is how I was taught to chop, and at culinary school, you're actually expected to attend a knife skills class once every week for months on end to master these skills. So don't be despondent if you try it at home and the first time fails. Chopping an onion really takes some time to learn, but the more you do it, the better you will get at it. Let's get started with the celery. Now this is a rib of celery or stick of celery. I find it easiest to remove some of the strings that celery has on the outside, because when you're chopping, those strings might interfere. So let me show you how to do that. For that, I'm going to use my paring knife and very carefully slice the top off, but not all the way. Can you see it's almost like a little door? And then I will pull some of the strings all the way down and put those in my scraps bowl. This is another habit you can get into, which is really useful in the kitchen. Always have a bowl on your counter that you can put your peels and your scraps straight into. It makes clearing up at the end so much easier. Right, let's see if I can get a few more strings and then we'll do the chopping. Now, the strings aren't necessarily inedible. They just could really bother you when you're chopping and then eating. And I actually really don't like them. I love celery in dips, but then I usually take off the strings. There you go, we've got a clean stick of celery. I'm going to cut it into thirds just to make the chopping slightly easier. And then I will show you different techniques. Now, with chopping, there are two ways to hold your food to ensure you don't actually cut your fingers. There is one hold called the bridge hold, which I'll show you in a minute, that you use for some types of foods where you put your hand over the food and your knife goes underneath it. For something like celery that is skinny or thin, it's a little bit hard to do the bridge hold, which is why we do something called the claw. Now, it's a funny name, but it describes exactly how you're going to hold your hand. You literally make a claw like this, and then you grab your food almost with your nails rather than your fingers. Can you see my fingertips are tucked in so that when my knife comes down, it will not be able to hit those fingertips but will be stopped by my knuckles. Now let me demonstrate this to you with the big knife. If you become really good at the claw, you're actually able to look up and talk and have a conversation whilst chopping, because you know your knuckles will forever stop the knife. Have a look. I'm going to do my claw, I'm going to hold my piece of celery, and then I'm going to start chopping. Also watch the motion of my knife. It is swinging a little bit, almost like a seesaw, a rocking motion, like a boat. I'm not doing that. That would also mean you would lift your knife potentially higher than your knuckles, in which case obviously you might then end up cutting yourself. So if you use your rocking motion, the tip of the knife, the front part, rarely never leaves the chopping board. It's just the back that comes up. Can you also notice how I'm holding the knife? My forefinger and my thumb are gripping the blade rather than the handle, and the rest of my hand is going around the handle. This gives you a comfortable and stable grip on the knife and ensures that it doesn't slip out of your hand accidentally while you're chopping. Most knives will have a handle that is shaped. Can you see there's a little bit of a rounding there to make space for your hand and make it comfortable. There you go. So we've done our celery in little half moons. This is just slicing your celery. Now let me show you, if you wanted to do celery sticks, maybe for a platter with dips, then again you would do your claw, but this time you hold it the other direction like this, and then you're going to come across, and I'm not doing a rocking motion this time, I'm just slicing. In other words, I'm sliding my knife from top to bottom, and that way you can ensure that it's a straight line. If it is easier, sometimes you could press down like that. That's fine too. And then again, you could use the bridge hold that I mentioned earlier, and you could slide that way. There are various ways of doing it. As long as you use either the bridge or the claw, you know your hands will be safe. Right, let's have a look at the leek. Now, a leek is a really tricky customer. It always has a bit of grit on the inside. Can you see that? There's also always dirt there. I find the easiest way to clean a leek is to cut off the root, which I've already done here, and then slice it in half lengthways, and then just hold it under cold running water while you work away the dirt with your fingers. This is the best way to ensure that you've actually spotted all the dirt and it's all run off with the water. Now I'm just going to get rid of this so we don't have to worry about the grit for now. Slicing leeks, for most of the dishes I use leeks, I would just slice them into half moons and sweat them really slowly like onion to make sure they caramelize and they get really nice and soft and sweet. Let me show you how to do that. Again, I'm going to use my claw and I'm going to use my rocking motion just as I did with the celery and continue all the way. Can you see I can have a conversation with you and I don't need to look down because I know my knuckles are stopping my knife. As you're cutting along, you'll move your claw back a little bit by little bit as you're cutting your item so that you make space for your next slice. Perfect, now that's our leek done. Spring onion, very similar. I'm not actually going to cut this, I just wanted to show you. I have seen a lot of people only use the white part of the spring onion. That is an absolute waste. I find the whole spring onion absolutely delicious and all of it is edible. What you could do if you wanted to split the two, you could use the white part in cooking and maybe the green part as garnish, but absolutely use all of it. This is the little root that you just cut off beforehand, and then like I just showed you with the leek and the celery, you slice it into rounds. One thing that is quite nice if you want to make your food look a little bit more elegant is cutting on the diagonal. So maybe I will show you actually with the spring onion. Let's trim off the little root and put that in our scraps bowl. Now have a look. If I just cut it like this, I would have rounds and that would be fine for most dishes. But if you want to use maybe some of the green bits and use that as garnish, then cutting on the diagonal, can you see I've actually used my knife in a slanted position now, gives you really nice, beautiful, elegant looking pieces of spring onion, and that would look really lovely on, say, the top of a stir fry or maybe a salad you're doing. So that's one way of making food look really professional. Right, these little guys are sugar snap peas. They are edible in their entirety. They're really nice and crunchy. You can eat them raw, but they're also delicious if you steam them for only about 1 minute, just a little bit of heat. Now, I have found though that even in some restaurants, they don't always remove the strings. Now, as you know with the celery, strings can be quite unpleasant when you're actually eating your food. Now have a look at how you remove them. You just nick the top. Can you see again, I'm leaving it slightly intact, and then the rest of it, you just pull off. And not all sugar snaps will have them, but I think most of them benefit from a quick run over, once over with the knife, and then you can make sure that when you're actually eating, it's a more pleasant experience. Can you see there? Now, these can be added to a stir fry or any kind of dish really whole. But again, if you want to make something look really pretty, you could cut them in half lengthwise, which then exposes the tiny little peas inside. So they're really pretty, and this is very lovely, for example, if you add a few on top of a salad. Great. Peppers, these are tricky ones to cut. I always ask, when I teach, I always ask my students, do they know how to cut peppers? And everyone assures me they do. But no one really knows about this trick. Watch, if you cut your pepper the way you've probably been doing it up to now, you will always have pepper pieces that are rounded, which is fine if you're going to add them to a salad, but it makes it really hard to chop them into cubes, for example, or have sticks for dipping. So let me show you how to get around that problem. You're going to slice off the top and the bottom. Now we're not going to discard this because it's edible. We might use it for something else or snack on it or even add that to the platter, that's fine. But can you see there's actually now a hole in the middle? Now, this is what we're going to do. We're going to slice it in half or just down the middle. And then you're going to cut around with your big knife very carefully. You're going to cut out the seeds and the membranes. The membranes are the white bits. Can you see now what you're left over with is a piece of pepper that very logically can be cut into sticks and then cubes, which wouldn't have been possible if they still had the rounded edges on the top and bottom. Have a look. These are we're going to do our claw, remember? I'm going to cut your slices. I'm going to just do a few. And then you're going to cut across to make your cubes if you needed them, or leave them in sticks if that's what you want. There you go, perfect little pepper squares.